What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh, God, what is it?
Some time ago, we did an ad episode where we talked about how we were going to get better with our ads.
I was wondering where you were going. Yeah. We're so shit at the ads.
That's what we said. We said, we're so shit, we're going to get better, and we just didn't.
We don't. We're so full of shit. All right, well, here they are. We got 5 sponsors currently.
All right, who are they?
First is the OG. The Einzelwiener.
Oh, that knob.
The bullfed.
Yeah.
Nah, he's the OG. He's been with us since the start.
No, he's good.
He is going to sell you whatever you need.
Yep.
He'll get it. What you should do is contact Jason from Einswick Dog Queer with some peculiar product, tell him you want it, and make him get it in and sell it to you. Even if you could buy it somewhere else, just make sure he gets it in for you.
Just make that bastard work.
But in all honesty, I'd say 90% of my shit comes from him, and it's all the best stuff.
I did see some feedback on our forum where somebody was really intrigued about your handler package, the one that you got from Jason. Obviously, it works. Like, people are paying attention to the ads. That's great. Even though we're shit at this, we do a terrible job of actually trying to keep things updated. It's great to see that the people who are investing in our show are actually getting some leeway.
Yep. Mate, I've heard that your wife sells some canine products.
My wife is doing great guns at the moment. I said before that she's been supported terrifically in the United States, which has been good, but I will swing that back home and say that so many more people in Australia are doing it. And it's great to see, like, there are people finally in the sporting dog world who are starting to prioritize nutrition for their dogs. And I know them. I can see them when Narelle comes in and says, oh, guess who bought some product off me for the first time. So,
are you saying there's no patient confidentiality?
No, there's patient confidentiality.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a mailing list.
Confidentiality.
Well, it's a mailing list.
Are you aware my dog is taking pee, collagen, and what's the other thing he takes?
Antinol.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been on that.
Antinol is not Narelle's business, but I've got to do a shout out for Antinol. They are absolutely fantastic. They're very supportive of our show. Whenever we've done seminars and so forth, they have been first to dip their hand in their pocket. They are very generous with their product. But let me just say, all that aside, their generosity and their advertising and marketing, let me just say on the other side of that, their product is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it does work. It's very beneficial.
For sure.
It's one of those things where they say Antinol for every dog every day. I totally agree with that. Narelle has even supported that. When people have asked them about her product, she says the 2 things that I would absolutely give to you is Antinol and her Gut Protect formula.
Yeah, right.
Gut Protect is like her holy grail of
like
her
the
whole
flagship
range.
of the range.
This is not me market talking, okay? Because
This is an ad.
This is an ad, but this is not me doing marketing.
But we've already pointed out we're shit at ads.
I know. Of all the things that she sells, and she sells some killer product, but the one thing that she does sell, which I absolutely agree with her, every dog should have this product, is the Gut Protect.
Really?
100%. It's nothing that they need for being sick. It's something that they need to do just to maintain great gut balance.
Okay.
And gut balance is like mental health. It's one of those things that you absolutely want to get control around. So products like Antinol, great for every day. Gut Protect, great for every day. There's other products that aren't even related to hers called Rosehip Vital and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic for dogs to be on every sort of day. But I know there's other people we need to talk about. If you want to learn more about Narelle's products, go to our website, caninceuticals.com. I think it's
You'll figure it out.
It's .com or .com.au. It's one of those.
No one types that shit anyway. Everyone just Googles it and then goes,
just Google it. You'll find it.
Hey, George Kittredge, I reckon we should get him on the show.
We should have George Kittredge on the show. Not only is he devilishly handsome, but he's got a fantastic, one-of-a-kind product that I've never seen replicated anywhere in the world. You and me were getting a car ride by him. We got to see the prototype firsthand.
And then his bike got stolen with the prototype on it.
Did.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, George has Rowdy Hound Dog Box. And so it's a crate that goes on the back of your motorbike so that your dog can go everywhere with you. Yeah. It's cool as shit. It's a great idea. You should totally get one. Tailored Canines in Canada.
Yeah.
Do you know that Taylor from Tailored Canines is hosting Jazz Whiting later in the year?
I do know that. Yes, I saw the ad. Very good.
Yep.
Not only is she doing great stuff with her Tailored Canine,
her training business,
but she's also getting a fantastic trainer over there to help with her tailored training.
She is. And finally, Barbara de Groot
The sugar mama from the Heart Dog
From the
Training.
Heart Dog Training.
Just fucking throws cash at us.
Just supports the show. God bless her.
Yeah. I think later on in the year when Narelle and I are over doing a seminar with Melanie Benware, Barbara de Groot is coming over.
Wonderful.
I think she has put down a like, and I said, you better come, sugar mama, and she gave me a thumbs up. So hopefully she's going to be there and I can give her some love to repay us for all the kindness and support that she's thrown at us and ask nothing in return.
All right. That's our ad.
Yeah.
That one's good to go for at least another 4 years. You'll hear from us then. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined in studio today by my co-host, Glenn Cook. And joining us for round two, though it's the first you're hearing because there was a disaster in the recording of the first, is Mr. Caisey Cainan. Caisey, welcome. How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to the show.
Week.
You've been mentioned a few times on the show. We've said your name a few times. Sometimes
he got to start one of the last episodes we did because he recorded it and I left him off the 300th show. And I thought, no, I can't do that to him because he went to the effort to do it. So I put him in the front and taunted him and called him the Tiger Prince.
Was barely awkward at all.
The Tiger Prince. You're down here in Sydney for the PSA Bonanza, which we're at the back end of now. How's your experience been, sir?
It's been excellent. It was good.
Yeah.
I put an L on the board on one of my dogs and a big win on the board for the other dog.
Yeah,
But
so you got two dogs, one in the ones that didn't go so good
didn't go good.
and one in the two that went wonderful.
Better than I expected.
That's worked out really good.
Yeah. It's been a huge week.
Give us the rundown. Tell everybody the 50,000 foot view of who you are.
I'm now a dog trainer. I identify as a dog trainer now.
Well done, sir. Well played.
Welcome to the team.
Yes.
Yeah. That kind of came about. I spent 30 years training exotic animals, lions, tigers, elephants.
Well, let's get into the weed of that because I think that's a big part of your behavioural career. Start from the start. Let's do an origin story because we primarily did that when we were at Pat's place and that was a colossal fuck up we had.
Our beards kept rubbing on the microphone.
We had beards and
So to just give the audience some context, 12 months ago, recorded an episode, but it was impromptu and we were using equipment that I just had at my shop and we were using wireless microphones.
we were going to video
It was
it.
going to be
we
a video.
videoed it. It was
episode.
going to be a whole
Yeah.
thing, and we set it all up, and it was great. And the video was awesome, but the sound, Glenn's microphone was rubbing on his beard.
Mine was
Yours
twisted in
kept
the shirt.
twisting upside down, so muffling against your body, and mine was clipping so badly that it just was like I was screaming the whole way through. So I spent a good 10 hours trying to fix it all before I ended up. I still have the footage, but I ended up giving up. So you're back, but in that episode, we talked about how it came to be that we even know you, and
What got me into animals.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's redo that.
So when I was a kid, like 8, 9 years old, my dad was a pressman, printed newspapers. Him and my mom split up, got back together, split up, and they were going to give it one last college try. And for some reason, they thought that they would. I had an uncle that was in the circus business, and they said, "Oh, let's all of us, me and my sister and them, load up in a caravan, a trailer, as we call it in America. Let's go try to live in a 20-foot trailer together and see if we get along better that way." And it was a disaster, as you would expect. Like, if you can't get along not seeing each other 8 hours a day, you're definitely not getting along 24/7. And so 2 weeks into that, my mom was like, "Yeah, nope, this isn't going to work. Me and your little sister are going." And they let 9-year-old Caisey make the decision. I still look back as like, I don't feel like they made the best choice here because they were like, "Do you want to stay here on the circus with your dad, or do you want to go with your mom and your sister and go to school?" And I was like, "That's a pretty loaded question. Of course I'm staying here. Like, you'd never drag me away." And so I stayed about a year and a half. They like, well, we need him to be educated too. So it became school. And then during the summer, I'd go travel with my uncle on the circus because I really enjoyed it. I was a juggler, a clown, all the ridiculous things. When I was 13 years old, my uncle had moved to this circus. It was a what they would call wild animal circus. It had a lot more animals, like 70, 80 animals, horses, elephants, lions, tigers. The guy that owned it was a self-taught animal trainer, German guy. He wasn't born into the circus family. He was a farmer by birth. I just kind of gravitated towards him and the animals.
What was his name?
Wayne Franzen. He was a high school teacher, actually. He went to college and he taught industrial arts. and then decided like he really was into animal training since he was a kid on a farm. Back then you could order an elephant. So he ordered an elephant and knew nothing about them and trained it himself, and then went out and bought some tigers because you could do that. You can kind of still do that. But he was just really good at it. He was just intuitively good at it.
So let me get this right. America back then was kind of like Wish for animals. Like you could just put an order in for an exotic animal and literally get it.
A lot of states, yeah. So
Wow.
like an Asian elephant, when he bought Oka, the elephant that I started with,
And he never had any experience with an elephant before. And he just
Nothing.
went off and bought himself an elephant.
nothing, he put an order in. Like they would import Indian elephants. She was from the last batch that got imported before once they get on the endangered species list, like once there's different layers to that. But
Yep.
when they get to a certain letter, there's no more import export. And so he got an elephant out of the last batch that got imported, which was 72, I think. Like before I was even born, Oka was a little baby elephant in a crate,
Yep.
shipped to America. He went and picked her up in Boston, drove her back to Wisconsin, opened the crate, said, "Here's my baby elephant," which I've done that myself later in life with African elephants. And that's a very dangerous proposition. Like they come out of the box pretty hot sometimes. And
Yep.
I've got a friend that has pieces missing out of him where one just came out and poked a hole in him.
Wow.
He just was really good at that. And to him, it was just a cow with a trunk, you know? So he trained her, and he's just one of those people just intuitively could read animals, probably from growing up around so many farm animals, you know, like you just get to where you don't even have to know the species. You just look at some behaviors and go, "Oh, that's fucking dangerous." Like don't poke that one. That one's pissed off. Like you figure that out. I think that's a lot of what's missing nowadays with just all of society is we're so bad at. That's why I feel like we have so many reactive dogs and so many dog problems nowadays is people just aren't at all
They're not
into.
rural.
Yeah,
They're not rural anymore.
Wayne came from a time where people still were, especially in Wisconsin, were still very connected to animals in
Yep.
their day-to-day life. Like there was no avoiding it, to where you spent your whole life, if you didn't want your head bashed in by a cow, you learned like, oh, when the cow looks like that, stay the fuck away from it, you know? And how to make them move. It just seems like nowadays, the more and more disconnected we get from animals, the worse and worse people get at that.
100%. Couldn't have said it better.
He was just intuitively really good at that. And I gravitated to him because I was there with my uncle, but I didn't really have any guardian of any sort.
Did you say that your dad originally left?
He was there for a while, yeah.
Right.
And then he went back to being a pressman.
And left you with your uncle.
Yeah, I would go to my uncle for the summer.
Right.
And then when I was 15, I've decided I had enough of this school nonsense. I'm going for good. And I just ran away and didn't come back.
Yep.
And I had to do that a couple times before they gave up on bringing me back. But eventually they were like, okay, this is too much of a waste of time. Just let him do what he's going to do. By then I had decided I was going to be an animal trainer. At first it was just the novelty of not going to school. The circus, like it's a really novel environment. It's exciting all the time. There's always something exciting going on. Wayne took an interest in me and kind of, because I was maybe not intuitively good at it, but I was really quick at learning how to not get hurt by animals. I showed an interest in it and I would work really hard. The biggest thing was I just was willing to work 24 hours a day. Because of that, he was willing to help me.
Well, that sounds like a great employee for any business.
Exactly. You know, and he would joke with me all the time, and he wasn't wrong, but he said, you should be paying me to work here, because he did. He taught me not just animals. I could weld, I could make a semi-trailer by the time I was 15 years old. I could cut it all apart and weld it back together. Like he was just always teaching me something, but he did that because I was willing to stay up all day and night doing it.
Amazing of you that you had the tenacity to do that, but what an incredible mentor to have.
Yeah. Like of all the people I've lost in my life, he's...
It hurts the most.
Yeah, like if I could just have, if there was one person, that's what I said in that story. My answer to the question was, if I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody right now that isn't around, it would be him for sure. Just because our relationship really transitioned as I got older. Like he had two sons, 1 year older than me, 1 year younger than me, and the three of us grew up together living in the same trailers. But then once we got to the teenage years where we're fighting over, like there's a limited amount of girls on the circus and a limited amount of money to be made, like elephant rides and things like that. Once we started fighting over girls and money, blood's always going to be thicker than water. So I was old enough. I just went out and did my own thing. We stayed friends the rest of his life. Every time I would run into him, I would be like oh, I learned this thing that you can do with an elephant to get this to happen. And like just little tricks. He always seemed like, wow, you figured that out. You're saying, no, I didn't figure it out for myself. I stole it from this other guy because now that I'm not just around you, I'm stealing ideas from other people, and it was just, I miss being able to do that with him, and just call him and be like, hey, did you know if you do this, this will happen type of things,
Some of those conversations with some of those people in your life, you don't know it at the time. You don't understand it. It's the best times of your life. You just don't have an appreciation of you until it's gone. It's like, I talk about Harley on the show a lot. I often think about him. I can't walk through this room and not look at a picture of him and think back to a memory of him or a close person like you're talking about with your colleague and mentor. You just don't understand how significant they are and how important they are and how pivotal they are in your life until you lose them, which is a shame. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you're in the moment and you go, oh, this is an incredible moment right here. Like this is a real landscape moment, a real defining moment in my life. But I find that, as I've said to several people, and I'm saying it a lot more now, I like to tell people now how special they are to me rather than say it at their eulogy to a bunch of people in a room I don't know. I'd rather them know that they mean a lot to me and I really appreciate and thank them. So when I listen to your story, and that's why I wanted to include it because it's an important story, those sort of things are exceptionally important, and I don't think people really value it until it's too late, and it's such a shame.
Yeah, he tragically got killed by a tiger when I was about 18, but that was a huge motivator for a bunch of things in my life. I hadn't worked lions and tigers. I was 100% focused on being an elephant guy, training elephants. I just still to this day that they're what spins my dials. But because he got killed by a tiger, I was like, oh, maybe I want to play around with that and see what that's like. And it turned out that that was what I was best at. And it kind of motivated me to do that.
So that was your transition into moving into big cats?
Into big cats was him being killed. Like my ex-wife was there when he got killed. And then we got together a couple years later and asking her questions because she actually saw it happen. There was a lot of speculation as to what happened exactly. It was basically just human error. Somebody let a tiger out that shouldn't have got out into the cage and he wasn't looking and it came up and nailed him. But
shit.
Just all of that. And like the whole, you guys say management fails on this a lot. If you're in the lion and tiger business, you say fatal. Management never fails. Like if it does, that's the end of your career. That prompted me to get into lions and tigers. And by then I'd trained so many other animals. Like learning theory is learning theory. It doesn't matter if it's a poodle or an elephant. Consequences, good and bad. That's what drives everything. I got really good at training tigers, and I wanted to be like, hey, this kid that grew up around Wayne, he's as good as it gets at this. I felt like I got to within the top 4. There's no real trials or anything, but a lot of times I wish there was, because if you get good at something, then you're like, well, I want to compete. I want to do it with some other people and find out.
As much as it pains me to do this and blow some smoke up your ass, when we first started talking and training and stuff, and I knew that you were in lions and tigers, I didn't have a sense that you were the Mac Daddy of lions and tigers, because you've never sort of even intimated that. But then I mentioned you to someone else and they were like, you mean Caisey Cainan? And I was like, yeah, that dickhead. And they're like, no, he's the fucking guy of lions and tigers. And so like, I'm sure you're not going to say it because you've never said it to me, but I understand you to be one of, if not the best lion and tiger trainer in the world. Because you hold records, right? So like I often say this, that I think Bart is the best dog trainer on the planet, but there's nothing to quantify that because how could you possibly compare people across different disciplines and whatever? But you hold record of like 18 tigers in the cage or something at one time.
Not records for the amount, but like I've trained tigers to do things that nobody else has ever done or one or two other people have. And I've done it with multiple different tigers and then also with a lion. A lot of what I'm known for is teaching tigers to walk around on 2 legs, jump over things on 2 legs, keep walking on 2 legs. It's called a Corbett.
There's video on your social media that people, if they're friends with you or they go onto your Facebook, there's a whole collage of work that you've done. You
can just Google my name and the animal activists have it on their website.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Why don't they?
We'll get to that. That was a big part of our last conversation, but let's keep teasing apart.
Yeah, I did it with a bunch of tigers. Tigers want to stand up to fight. It's like the difference between a Rottweiler and a Malinois. Like they'll both bite, but for different reasons and in a very different way. Tigers like to stand up and walk on two legs when they fight with somebody. So you just have to learn how to turn that drive on and off safely, where lions do the opposite. Like they bury their head and like a boxer and slash with the other foot. So teaching them to just sit up, much less stand up, is difficult. So I made a point to teach a bunch of lions to do it too. Just
How do you do that with like a target stick or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just pressure. We've talked about this before, but lion and tiger training is napopo, and it has been for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's pressure into a behavior, reward out of behavior. That's how.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the Nipopo logo is the dancing bear. Bart says that. He said, I didn't invent this shit.
Yeah.
Russian gypsies have been teaching bears to dance for 300 years
Yeah.
using this exact same methodology.
Yeah, he
Exact
marketed
same.
the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, I didn't know what napopo was when I became a dog trainer, and I heard Pat talking about it. I was like,
That's training.
well, Jesus Christ, that's how I've trained every animal. I don't know who Bart Bellin is, but I've done this.
Yeah.
Because it works. Like, it's worked for hundreds of years. There's so much proof of it. But so I was decent at it. I was decent at lions and tigers. So to get back on track with this, I came to Australia. I was living in Dubai, and my current wife is Australian. I met her in America, and we traveled all over the world. But we were in Dubai. She hadn't been back to Australia in quite a while. She has a science degree and wanted to kind of use that and not be a gypsy anymore, which I get. A company here that does movie animals called Animals All Around. They did the Red Dog movies and the movie that just came out on Netflix called Buckley's Chance.
You had something to do with the Red Dog movie, didn't you?
No, other than living with the red dogs that are left.
Minor sidetrack. I was so interested to hear that dog bit a bunch of people and was a real asshole.
The last one, Dodge, he's pretty spicy, like a little defensive, just normal Kelpie.
Yeah.
You know, but he'll ambush you out
Normal
of the
working
bushes.
Kelpie,
Yeah,
not
he'll
like a
ambush-
city Kelpie.
Not a full-grown adult male, but like when we lived there, my wife would have to be careful walking around at night because he'd come out and nip her. He's not a killer, but he's
He's a nipper.
But
He's a driver.
some of those Kelpies do that for fun. Like
Yeah.
they genuinely are just dickheads
Yeah.
that
We
like
own a-
pushing people's buttons.
we own a blue cattle dog to this day.
Cattle
that's the
dogs are
same way.
notorious for
Like,
it, especially the
he
old.
doesn't get you when you come through the gate. He waits till you're halfway across the yard and the gate's closed because
Yep.
he doesn't want you to escape.
The cattle
But-
dogs that were around earlier on in my career, they were notorious for biting in the heels. That's what their job is. And
Yeah.
that's what they've been genetically selected
It's good
for
genetics.
over 200 years of colonization in Australia. That's what they bred them for, and that's what they have them around for. So people are going, oh, why are they doing this? Well, that's what you bred them for in genetics,
Yeah.
and you're trying to strip it out of them to have them as a domesticated pet. Anyway, I
So
digress.
you came to Australia.
Yeah, they had 2 tigers born, and we were living in Dubai. We lived in the Middle East for like 5 years. I hated it. Mostly the weather. It's hot all the time and miserable.
Yep.
So this company offered me a job raising and training these 2 baby tigers. And I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to do that. My wife wants to come back to Australia. And so we came back, and that wasn't ready to happen yet. So I spent about 8 months on a circus here, and I trained a big act with 6 camels, 6 llamas, and 2 water buffalo.
What did it do? What did you do with those animals?
It was what they call a Liberty Act, like a living carousel. They would run around in different patterns and waltz and line up and like run in a line. And the camels would lay down and the llamas would jump over them. The camels and llamas did quite a bit. The buffalo, we were happy if they just came in and went calmly around the ring a couple of times and left without smashing anything. It was one of the nicest looking acts, just aesthetically, because it was such a big act. Like, all those animals would be, the last animal was almost to the back of the, or the first animal, you know. And then the tigers were ready, and we moved to Canungra, and I started raising those and training them. And we
Did you have them at your house?
We had them where we lived, yeah.
Yeah. So what? They're just in.
We had a zoo type enclosure built there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, they were still little. So we would do encounters with the public. We did twice. So we went to the Mogo Zoo. I hadn't been in Australia for very long. It was my first trip down to the South Coast. And the first time I went down there, it was the bushfires. And so you guys might remember the Mogo Zoo almost burned down. We were on the news. We were out there fighting fires all night. I was like, God, this place sucks. Always on fire. The gas station exploded there and everything. And so that cut short the time we were supposed to be there because they burned a bunch of fences down. We had to evac a bunch of animals. So they said, look, take the tigers back to Queensland. We're going to rebuild. We'll have you come back for the next school holidays. come down there for the next school holidays, COVID. And I'm like, I'm never coming back here. This place is horrible. It's a natural disaster. That kind of shut down the exotic animal business. Like that was the company I was working for said, hey, we may not make a movie or a TV show, but we did a Foxtel commercial with the tiger where I was sitting on a motorcycle with the tiger and the guys you talk about from the footy show were the other guys in the commercial.
Sam Newman.
One's kind of a fat guy now.
Fatty?
Fletch. And anyway, not that important, but they were famous and I didn't know it. We're sitting on these Harleys, supposed to look like bikers, and I've got my tiger next to mine. They were kind of playing off the whole Tiger King thing.
Well, that came into vogue sort of probably when you just hit the Australian shores. Like the Tiger King just exploded in everyone's face.
Let's get this out of the way.
Yeah. It's a perfect entry for it.
You brought it up. You said it. You not only know Joe Exotic,
I helped him source his first tiger.
So you created the Tiger King.
I'm not going to admit that, but I did know Joe. He's a good guy. We were really good friends for a lot of years. He definitely derailed as time went on. But when I first met Joe, he was just one of the nicest guys I ever met. He had a little roadside zoo that had bears and deer. And I pulled in there one day with the semi full of elephants, and he came running out. You got tigers in there? No, some elephants. Sell me an elephant. Can't do that. How about a tiger? I said, I don't have any, but I know some people that do. And I gave him some phone numbers, and the rest is a Netflix series.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that film clip where he's sitting in the throne
yeah,
with two tigers, they're your tigers.
No, they're not mine. I was there when they shot that.
Right.
Like they were making a music video, and they're a friend of mine's tigers. Like Joe didn't have any tigers you could do something like that with because he wasn't a very good trainer. But I will say he was always very humane with the cats when I saw him. Like I never saw him do anything outside the scope of what I would call abuse.
Sure.
He was an entertainer and a keeper, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was just the saddest thing about Joe is all he wanted to be was famous. That was his drive, was just to be famous for whatever. Well, that's the sad thing. Like he wanted to be
he's infamous.
The tiger guy, and he did that, and he wasn't famous enough. And I knew him when he was a magician, and you can totally picture Arrested Development, like that was him.
Yep.
Then he was going to be a musician, just constantly in pursuit of becoming famous. And then when the guy ends up being famous, he can't enjoy it because he's in prison. Like at one point, I would say he was the most famous person in the world.
Yep. Everyone was speaking about it.
But by then, he couldn't enjoy it. To me, that's a really sad realization that everything he was trying to do finally happened for the wrong reason.
What unraveled him, Caisey? What do you think brought him down?
A lot of it was animal activists and just what's the animal governing body for us in the United States, the USDA. Mm. He couldn't deal with that, and he couldn't not respond. He was just one of those people. Like, I haven't been in the lion and tiger business now since COVID, and I get a couple emails a year, somebody wishing me dead for what I did with lions and tigers. And I can read that and laugh. I can read that, not even acknowledge it. Like, it doesn't affect me at all. It doesn't affect my sleep habits or anything, where Joe just wasn't capable of that. Like, he took everything very personal and wasn't able to, like, we would have long conversations about, you understand why people think that, right? Like, I'm not an idiot. There's bad people in every business.
Yeah.
And there's been bad people in the exotic animal business. And if you don't think that, you're lying to yourself. And just like there is in the dog business. But I don't feel that it's the norm for any of them. Like, it can't be. As soon as it is, then it balances itself out. But he just couldn't not take everything personal. It would just eat at him and eat at him. And he had a YouTube channel where he'd make these videos having a go at Carol Baskin. Like,
yeah, I saw that on the show. Yeah.
But I was there when they shot that music video, and I walked up and I saw what was happening. And I literally looked at my friend Doug and I said, hey, I'm getting out of here. I came by to hang out because he lived really close to me. Joe's place was very close to where I lived. And I said, hey, I'm going to get out of here. I don't see anything good that could come from me. Ended up on one of these cameras that got out here. And that was 12 years before the Tiger King came out. So when that came out and I watched it and I saw that scene, I went, oh my God, it's like I had a crystal ball. I knew this shit was going to happen.
It was filmed that long ago. It was 12 years before they actually brought the documentary to life.
That footage was
Wow.
like most of that. There was Joe Exotic TV.
Yeah.
He had a channel on YouTube. He wanted to be a musician. But yeah, like most of that stuff was a decade before the Tiger King came out. Like
Right.
hardly any of that was recent history.
Wow.
It was-
Okay, we've ticked the Tiger King box. You're the new Tiger King.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about, before we move on to other stuff you've done, I'm always interested when you talk about the difference between training lions and tigers and the difference in the way they think and you can cooperate with them and stuff like that. Expand on that for me.
In my brain, tigers are cats and lions are dogs. You can work tigers, very minimal pressure from a distance. Big cat trainers will say you can work tigers with white gloves. Like you can just a touch here is plenty and they'll go or they'll do this, which makes them very easy to train, especially with negative reinforcement, like just touching here and touching here. I can teach any tiger to sit up in 15 minutes and just touch, 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 sits up, reward it, touch, touch, touch. 6 repetitions. Tiger's like, hey, I don't want you touching my feet. I'll just sit up. Where lions are the polar opposite. Like they enjoy roughness. It would be like a bulldog, like a bull or any of the bully breeds, like the difference between a poodle and a bully breed. The more you press on a lion or apply pressure, the more they're like, I love this game. Let's do more of that. I'm getting a little bit excited. I think maybe I'll hit you now. I feel like lions are a lot harder to train, but once you have them, you can have way more of a relationship with a lion.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's what you told me one time is that lions are pack animals,
Yeah.
so they're affiliative. You can
And
play tug with them. You can
Yeah.
smack them around. They enjoy that.
They love it.
Yeah.
Like a male lion, when I had the male lions that I had in Dubai, like their idea of play was for me to just walk in there and act like I was boxing with them and punch him on the nose. And they'd be like, oh, he loves us. That's my favorite game is I come over and he pops me on the nose. Where if you did that to a tiger, they would be
over.
immediately defensive. And they'd be like, the second you turn around, you're dying.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the other thing. Like I always trust all animals 100% to be exactly what they are.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to be anything different, but like chances I'll take with a lion as far as just like laying on the ground or walking around with my back to him is very different than what I'll do with a tiger. Like I've had tigers that were trained to do, they're way more acrobatic than a lion. So you can teach them to do way cooler stuff, like jumping wise and they're just more acrobatic. But they're very dangerous because they're always looking for that opportunity. Like you can be friends, but also if you turn around and move too fast the other way, I am chasing you down because that's what my genetics tell me to do.
So I think I remember you saying one time that when you hear about people being killed by big cats, you make a mistake, you can be killed by a tiger pretty easily. But when somebody has a lion turn on them, they probably deserve whatever that lion was given
or
to
they've
them.
done something. Maybe they didn't deserve it, but something in the environment. Like usually when it's with a lion, it's something has catastrophically gone wrong. And that could be environmental outside of the cage that sets them off. But for sure, like people have put too much pressure on a lion and it's just said, hey, that's enough. And I actually am bigger than you. So let me just take that stick off of you. And like that does happen.
Have there been fatalities by lions in the circus industry?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I wouldn't say lots.
More with tigers?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the famous one is Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah.
Shouldn't say it's famous, but I should say the most notable one of late is Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah.
What happened there? Do you know? What went down?
They were expecting tigers to not be tiger.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And you literally just spoke about that 5 minutes ago where you said you 100% expect an animal to be what it is.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Yeah. In America, where it's really easy, used to be really, in some states it still is. Like when I was a kid, you could buy a tiger at a pet store in Nevada or Texas. Like that was on the table. You could just walk into a pet shop and buy a baby tiger.
See, that's insane to our culture.
To
now.
Australia, yeah. Where here, it'd be easier to buy a Kia Coke than a tiger, I think.
Yeah.
And probably more legal. But like the idea that people would buy that and think that it was going to be a pet. I've never had any real serious problem or been let down by a lion or a tiger because I expect them to be a lion or a tiger. And so I don't expect them to be Fido. Like that's where things usually go wrong is people, I trusted them and I respected them. They respected me, but I didn't expect them to be something else.
I understand that from a dog point of view because my early career was fundamentally buying very aggressive Rottweilers and Shepherds and literally going around and meeting them for the first time, taking them and putting them back a ute and driving them down to our facility. The reason that I didn't get chewed up as badly as a lot of other people in the industry who were doing similar things at the time is that I always had a question in my mind is, who are you and what are you all about? And once I sort of established that with the dog, then I knew what I could do and what I couldn't do. There's a couple of reasons I relate to that. One, I had good mentorship. And two, when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time on a farm with my uncle. So all the school holidays that I had, I'd go up to a farm and my uncle had, like a few head of cattle and sheep and chickens and all those sort of things. So I was always out with him, herding livestock up, collecting eggs from grumpy chickens and so forth. So I kind of knew what animals did and how they reacted around me. And I learned that very early on. So I've got some scars on me. I mean, I've got skin that's very bruisable and it tags up very easy. And for all of the years that I've spent with those type of dogs, like there's people who have been in at a fraction of the time and they've got really bad bites on their bicep, on their forearms, on their legs and so forth. I'm not one of those people.
Ouch.
But only because I had the opportunity to let a dog be a dog and not push it to the point where that dog had to say to me, you don't understand me, you don't get me, and you don't understand the amount of pressure you're putting on me and what you're asking of me right now. It's only just been good fortune. And touch wood, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Even to the point now where I have to walk in kennels at night and be the first experience that dog's had of me, but I can calm a dog down within seconds. I can bring that dog down to a neutrality point because then I show the dog, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm actually here to help you. If you just let me show you what I'm going to do. And then the dog realizes and go, yeah, you're right. You're not here to hurt me. I'm still a little afraid of you and I'm still wary of you, but I don't feel I have to bite you anymore. I'll just keep avoiding you for the time being. The reason a lot of people that I know get tagged up, especially new people hitting the industry, all those key points that you were bringing up before, they're too impatient. And they just don't have the knowledge or they haven't been mentored well enough to understand that. And it's something that I try and teach my staff now when we're doing it. They do appreciate it and they are taking it in when I'm going and sitting with them and saying, learn from the mistakes of people in the past, including myself. These are the things that you really need to pay attention to. You just can't come in and say, I was too busy doing my job to notice what my job actually involves.
Yeah, for sure.
Through your time, you've trained everything that a circus has, plus more.
Bunch of other stuff, mice and things. I did a lot of film stuff and zoo stuff. So
didn't you do Babe as well? Were you involved in the filming of Babe?
Not Babe. Just in the last year, though, like we've done, now the movie industry's picked up here, so there's been some and there's more coming. But
you've been rubbing shoulders with Ron Howard recently?
Eden, yeah, a big movie with Ron Howard, and Desert King, which will come out in October on Netflix. That's like Australia's version of Yellowstone.
Yeah, cool.
A lot of different animals, enough to where I feel like you could just throw some species out and I haven't trained that, but I probably could.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about, so over the 30 years or so of doing that, your experience with the industry and the changes of like animal activism and stuff like that.
Well, it got regulated, more or less regulated out of business, like just mostly animal rights activists were driving that, but for sure just a change in society. As people become more and more disconnected from animals, then the feeling that it should be a right to own an animal kind of changes. I don't know if it was you guys or Panos and them. Somebody just did an episode about, do you think dogs are a luxury item? And so I feel like we're coming to a point where that's going to be the case, sadly, where just having a pet is going to be a luxury item. Like if you look at just the difference in the last 20 years of what it costs and what hoops you have to jump through to own an animal, like we're being regulated out of the hobby of pet ownership. Whether anybody wants to agree with me or not, like you can literally just watch that happening.
Yeah.
But with the circus, it was just, there was never an outright ban. It would be against the rules to transport animals in this state or house them in a way, like they would just see what the standard was and then create some standard that was unreachable and say, yep, if you can do all this, then you can do it. I haven't actually lived in the States for about 15 years now, just because it was going that direction then. And I could see it. And I thought, well, let me go try and do this. I really wanted to travel and see other places, and it was a great opportunity to do that. But all over Europe, the whole time I was there, same thing. Like, you'll be able to do this stuff in third world countries probably, although a lot of times those are the first to get banned because it's a much more corrupt government, so you don't even have to hide it. You can just say, hey, PETA comes in, and Mexico, for example, had ridiculous amounts of circus animals, and then out of nowhere, the government just said, okay, circus animals are against the law, which led to most of those animals either going to zoos or being euthanized and overcrowding in zoos, which led to more euthanization. But it wasn't even hidden. It was just, hey, animal rights groups gave us a lot of money to tell you guys you're out of business.
But they don't care about that because it's just a short-term problem for a long-term fix in their eyes.
Yeah.
Interesting. A couple episodes ago, we were really harping on about the South Australia dog sports ban, but I ended up taking down the video I made about it because, I put the time in to read it all properly. And it's not banned. It's just if you do it, now your dog's registered dangerous. And if anything happens with that dog, so now you're stuck by the laws of a registered dangerous dog. And if anything happens with that dog, it's $100,000 fine.
Yeah.
And so that's actually so much worse. It seems like you'd be better off saying, oh, you're just banned from doing IGP because then just IGP's banned. That now goes that if anybody's dog, whether you're doing a dog sport or not, but if your dog gets registered dangerous and then there's an incident that happens after that, that's $100,000 fine.
Exactly.
So when your average mum and dad, when their kid wants a dog, if they're people that will read that, they'll go, well, we can't afford that.
We
like
can't risk
if
that.
the dog gets out
Exactly.
in the street and bites someone, like sure, there's got to be a repercussion for that, but $100,000 fine for your family pet biting someone, that's going to be a significant thing that
Deterrent.
stops a lot
It's
of
a
people from
deterrent.
getting a pet.
Is that the
For
maximum penalty like it is in most cases, or is that you're just hit with $100,000 fine?
I'm not sure. I think it's
they
the maximum of
changed-
what it can be. Yeah.
No, they changed them all. All the dog-related fines went up 10 times. So
in
that
South
was-
Australia or
yeah.
everywhere?
No, in
South
South Australia.
Australia.
Yeah,
That's-
South Australia. Like I was
So-
going to say, it hasn't here.
The
No,
maximum fine for
Yeah.
a dog bite there was $10,000, and now it's $100,000.
Well, that sucks for modern day training principles because there's going to still be a shitload of dogs biting people.
Well, this is the issue, right? So this is
Right.
the thing. Like, it makes the situation far worse
Yep.
than we even thought it was. Because like banning bite sports is one thing, but making it so that you're limiting how many trainers know what they're doing, what they're allowed to do, and then putting the average person in a position where their dog they can't get help with and is now likely to cost them as much as their
Possibly
mortgage.
$100,000.
Yeah, like their house. It's a pretty easy decision why I'm not getting a dog. When the kids then say, why can't we get a dog? Because we can't afford it. We can't afford
It's
for
too
this
big
situation.
of a risk. That's what I mean. I've been saying this for 20 years, and when I started saying it, people would argue tooth and nail. No, they're not against ownership of all animals. It's just, it's not. It's not the circus. It's not the zoos. It's not the aquariums. It's everything. They just can't fight everybody at once, but they'll chip away and chip away. And once they didn't have to fight with us at the circus, they had a lot more time and resources to go after dog trainers or horses.
There's no end to this. This is what people don't understand. There's a lot of people who are anti-dog sports who do other dog activities, and they're kind of rallying around thinking, oh, yeah, let's get rid of dog sports. That's great. But they don't realize when that day comes, where it will in the future, there is a future where that's going to happen, unfortunately. When that day comes, they're going to come after agility people because they're going to go, well, we can't stop.
Yeah.
It can't finish here.
Well, they showed their hand a while ago when the Animal Justice Party were even opposed to seeing eye dogs.
Exactly. Or working dogs of any type.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with circuses and zoos in America. Like, there was a point when I was a kid, those two industries were very tied together, and there would be animals traded back and forth. And
everybody thought they were untouchable then. Nobody had any idea this sort of thing would happen. Anybody that I used to speak to in these early days about tail docking, about prong collars, about sport dog training, everybody had the same attitude. It won't affect us. Don't worry, you're wasting your time.
it's all tied together. Like, the zoos just said, oh, let the animal activists and the government go after the circuses. That won't affect us. We don't make the animals do any tricks. For 10 years, that was true. And then when they got done bashing the circuses out of business, they immediately turned on the zoos, and they are now fighting the same fight we could have been fighting together. But instead, none of the circus people are in it. So, hey, you're on your own. You let us get crushed.
To stay relevant, you need an enemy. You need somebody to keep closing down all the time. It's not going to end. That's what people don't realize. They keep thinking, if I push you away from me, if I turn the light off me, they won't come after me. They'll go after you, and then it'll be done. But that's not the case. They'll go, cool, we've done that. We've won that fight. Now we have to come back after the others because A, we need funding. B, we need to be relevant because we still need to be in hearts and minds of people.
That's the other thing is there's a lot of money in that.
Of course there is. And ego and corruption.
It's super sad to me that it's driven by ignorance.
Comes from a good place.
I've
but
studied animal activists literally since I was a kid.
Yep.
Like I've been fighting them since I was a teenager. And 90% of them are just people that are ignorant to what is, like they've been told something is black and white that is every color in the rainbow besides black and white. Some of those people you can reason with if you have the time and the wherewithal. Some of them you can't. Sometimes you have to just say, hey, I get it. I understand why you feel that way and why you believe that. But then there's that 10% of those people that are just driven by greed and evil. The repercussions of it are what are sad. I think we're within 20 years of you'll have to be rich to have a dog.
It's changed so much over the landscape of my life.
Yeah.
Between 1990, when I really started getting involved in it, to now, it's changed so much already. There's so much that's been lost. There's so much that's been taken.
Yeah, just the legality of it and like registering dogs and...
Well, having to skip borders to come and train your dog for sport dog work, which everybody is having a ball. The dogs are loving it. We've talked about this till the cows come home. It's outrageous.
It's what actually got me into the dog business was, when they said, hey, we're not going to make any movies for who knows how long. We can't afford to pay you what we're paying you. I had literally just got Banjo, our second cattle dog, and I'm at Pet Barn, and the two people in front of me check out, and their bills are $500 and $700 each. And I went, Jesus, I'm in the wrong business. Look around in here. This is one of the biggest stores in the shopping center, and there's people will always find a way to spend some money on their dogs. I like it that people consider dogs their kids. The fur baby thing doesn't bother me. Like that's literally fed me quite well for the last 3.5 years. To where I just looked at it and went, I see some pretty unruly dogs in this Pet Barn. I'm getting laid off. I bet I could train that unruly dog to behave itself. And I bet she would pay me $500 to $700 to do that. And so I just immediately started a dog training business. I was lucky enough that I found resources. That's how I found you guys. I knew nothing about training pet dogs, not a thing. And I got on YouTube.
We found each other through
Clubhouse.
Yeah.
But I'd already been listening to the Canine Paradigm for a while. I knew I could train a dog. I wasn't sure if I could train a human. Like they're hard-headed. And I was like, there must be some people doing this already.
Yeah.
Like I literally, the idea of being a professional dog trainer had never even crossed my mind. And I went, let's get on YouTube and see what that looks like. You end up at Larry Crone's page. And I'm like, yeah, this guy seems to be doing all right.
And that's 50-50 that you end on Larry Crone or Zach George.
I ended up on Zach George too. And like, I wasn't a dog trainer yet, but I recognized ridiculousness when I see it.
That's so well put.
And so I went, okay, not
Fuck
him.
you, Zach George.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I was just like, well, this guy seems to be making money, but I don't think he's actually training any dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Larry Crone, I go, okay, this guy's doing something. And he said something about Chad Mackin and Jay Jack. I'm like, oh, who are these guys? I dig down the rabbit hole. I find them. I find what I think is, no offense to you guys who are, Pat's one of my best friends, but I found what was the best podcast I think ever made in the history of dog podcasts, which was Chad and Jay. And then in that, I find you guys and I'm like, oh, this thing's still going. These guys are still talking. That's cool.
Before you carry on, I agree. I loved listening to dog training conversations, those two guys.
Oh my God.
I was legit bummed when they said they were going to do it anymore. And I was like, but what do I do on Friday mornings?
Exactly. When I finished the last episode, I went, okay, but now what?
Yeah.
But then with the invention of Clubhouse, when I actually started talking to you guys, and I think I went to no, that was after.
Yeah. You'd messaged me a couple of times.
Yeah. Because I started the dog training business. One of the best resources I found, because eventually I was like, okay, the training the people is very much the same as training the dogs. Just the learning theory is the same, just different tools. How do I get these people to hire me? And so I found Adam Katz, and I was like, hey, this guy, I can just give him some money and he'll do all the advertising and all that part that I'm definitely not going to be good at. That was probably the best move I made. Like to this day, I still pay him and I don't think about it. I don't get involved with any of that. I make a couple of, like, you've seen my social media for the business. It's non-existent. It's just every once in a while, hey, you should make some content so people know you're still in business. Right. But when I started talking to you guys and other, like Chad and Jay were on Clubhouse too, you know, and talking to these people, I was like, oh, I quite like this. They all seem to be into this dog sport stuff. Let me get into that a little bit, you know? And so I tried to do IGP with my cattle dog and a bunch of other ridiculous stuff before I got a Malinois. But I went to Pat's seminar, and when I met him in person,
You just thought, holy fuck, that's what a man looks like.
God, I was like,
His famous line.
that guy's fucking hair. His hair. Oh my God. I'm walking around with 3 and this motherfucker's hogging like a whole head and a half of hair. It wasn't that I learned anything mind altering. It was just the way he was able to explain things. It's like, God, if I could explain it that way to people, like all the people that I taught how to train tigers, if I could have said it that way, they might have understood it. I wouldn't have had to get so angry at him and start yelling at him all the time. And so we got to be friends. And then I got into PSA. So saw each other very regularly.
I mean, for context on the PSA front, you end up with Zeus like 3rd or 4th hand, right? Zeus had been passed around a bit. He'd done some IGP. You ended up with him, did some more IGP, did some Mondio, and then before we got PSA going again, and you were at the first one that we managed to get going again and did a PDC with him. And to certainly blow some smoke up your ass on this front is that PSA, we never let it die here, and there were a few false starts in Queensland a few times, right? People trying to get it going but just didn't have whatever it took to get it going. But you have for sure been a massive part of getting it, the growth that we're at now, and that we're at the back end of this giant bonanza. You've got a big functioning club to the point where your club got outrageous, and we had to say, guys, you got to keep that smaller so that you can actually achieve
train the
dogs.
Things.
Yeah. But that's been awesome. And like so much of the growth has been because of your interest in it and your
passion
commitment and
drive.
consistency in doing it. From my point of view, I talk about it quite a lot because I've actually been, again, I hate fucking saying nice things about you, but like it's been very fun to watch because your skill set with animals is fucking ridiculous. Like it's huge, but narrowing that in onto bringing a dog into competition has been very fun to watch, and just changing the way that like you've been working with animals in general, and then having you, like, to me, I've been kind of bumper bowling with you for the last 3 years, like just knocking it off the edges until we get down the right channel. And we're very much there. You're the first person after me, because I'm number 1 and you're number 2, to pass a leg of a PSA 2 in Australia.
Yeah.
Fucking like weekend. Enormous accomplishment, like fucking huge deal for a guy that's only been in biting dogs for a few years. It's a huge thing. And with a 2nd or 3rd hand dog that has done a bunch of other stuff and had a bunch of like
entry-level titles.
Yeah, but non-complementary training, like training that actually made it much more difficult for you to achieve that. So it's been really cool to watch.
For sure.
I'm curious about, as someone who has trained so many different animals, and I know we've discussed it, but like being in the circus is kind of going into competition every day, right?
Yeah,
like you're on show every day. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that are really different in terms of high-end precision dog training versus the high-end precision tiger training and stuff that you were doing all the time. Like, what have you had to change radically?
Mostly with the dogs. I'm a big fan and always have been a big fan of free shaping. Even though circus is like made out to be all punishment and this and that, like I'm the polar opposite. Like, you know me personally, and I've gotten better about not being that way, but I literally shaped the heel on my youngest Malinois because I like that. I'm a big fan of, and circus animal training is very minimal punishment because you're not in the business of teaching animals so much not to do things. You're in the business of teaching them to do things in front of a crowd twice a day, 7 days a week. So like, you can't have shut down animals. It's very obvious. That's the irony of it, is what they're complaining about. And I'm not talking bad about dog training, but I promise you there's far more abuse happening in your average pet owner home than what you would find at a circus, because
it's not
circus,
conducive.
We don't care if they're being naughty. We just want them to do the tricks.
Yeah.
We set up everything else to be management, so we don't have to deal with that. So it's all about like, hey, I need good motivation. I need you to want to do this every single time. Where, if I'm honest, my pet dog training business is 90% of the time I need to teach somebody how to punish their dog. I'm effective at that. I'm good at it. But what I like doing is to sit there with a treat and train or a clicker and a bag of food and be like, hey, let me see what kind of cool shit I can trick this animal into doing where he thinks he's doing it. And like, that's the fallout, is that I have a lot of dogs that think that
That's the magic right there. You said it. I'm a fan of that. I call it the illusion of control. You know, like making a dog think I came up with this idea. I'm the smartest one in the room. I think when you really get and you really have surpassed a different level of understanding in training, when you understand how to empower an animal to believe I'm the one who came up with this idea and all you're doing is supplying me with treats. There's a certain type of magic in that when you've got to that level of understanding and you can pull it off with any animal.
It creates a dopamine spike in, like, I know why I like doing it. Like, to me, it's the dopamine and, what's it going to think
It's a win-win.
of?
It's
the issue with it that you come into in high-level competitive training is you want to narrow that down and take away a bunch of those options way sooner than what I usually do and be like, hey, I know you think it could be all of the, like Zeus is a really good example of that. Like, he's, I would say, very well trained, but he always thinks there's more than one option. Like, he'll look at a thing and go, yeah, but you also really like it when I do this. What if I go do that instead? Where with Bishop, I've been a lot more careful because you've been pulling me up on it. Like, it's only this. It can only be that. There's never another path. It's just this pathway or no pathway. I'm getting better about it. Like, I'm way better with the dogs at club that aren't mine because I don't have to live with them. So it's just 4 hours a couple times a week of being like, hey, don't let them get away with that nonsense. Like, I'm better at telling people to pull their dogs up than I am to hear you tell me to do it. You know, like, I always get this look like, yeah, I am. Fuck. But that's the biggest difference is in the circus, you don't care about any of that stuff. Like, you're trying to find the coolest thing you can convince an animal to do that you can show on a regular basis. It's very much like trialing. Like, I don't get nervous about trials. I do now because of the other dogs from my club. But me and my dog, like, I've done it enough with Zeus, as you know, that like nothing he could do would surprise me or even like Bishop did. Bishop did this trial. I thought,
when he pulled his muzzle off?
Yeah. Like, I turned around and went, I didn't think that was going to happen. That actually does catch me off guard. But with Zeus, like, I just always expect him to do some random shit, so it doesn't surprise me anymore.
Yeah.
But circus acts is like doing trials twice a day, every day. Like, you're training in front of people all the time, to an audience, to a standard. Like, if the animals go in there and they don't do anything, people want their money back. Like, you need them to want to perform. And so I'm really good at that. Like, I can definitely motivate animals to want to do things. And just out of necessity with the pet business, I've gotten pretty good at motivating them to not do things too, because that's 90% of the pet business in my experience.
Do you think the reason you got so into the biting dogs and the dog sport stuff is because you spent your whole life circling around aggression in animals that you really don't want to bring it out and like keeping it at bay? And like, I feel like I observe of you, but let's hear it from the cat's mouth, is getting to play in aggression finally. Like, getting to like really be like, no, let's crank this up to 11 and point it at something specifically.
Yeah, for sure. Talking to you on Clubhouse before I actually knew you, and people were talking about decoying, and I thought, I won't ever be good at that. Like, I spent 30 years literally doing everything I could to not like shut that down at every avenue. Like, you cannot bite. You can do anything else.
And not just shut it down, but give him no reason to show it to you.
I'm really good at not eliciting aggression. Like, I can walk in with a lion or tiger and not threaten them, and they don't threaten me. And I know how to act to not create defensiveness or prey. Like, I'm super hyper aware of that. So I thought, well, I would never be good at eliciting that because I spent 30 years practicing not doing it. But that's not the case. I'm actually really good because I go, okay, all the dumb shit that you've seen people do with lions and tigers that makes them want to bite, just do that. Yeah. And they'll bite. And it turns out it is. Like, it's literally prey is prey. It doesn't matter what animal is hunting. I have a dog now that I raised with that intention, and he is I would say he's a prey monster. Like he hunts human beings. And that's because since he was a puppy, I've been doing everything I could to be like, you hunt those. Yeah. That's what you hunt.
Yeah. And done a good job. Kept him very social. He's still an easy, happy-go-lucky dog. But when the conditions are correct, he knows what's up.
When he gets the signal that we're hunting human beings, he is undoubtedly, that's what he'll do,
On that point, Caisey, when you're talking about the fact that you were spending most of your career not eliciting any sort of aggression or anything, did you ever do that by accident and learn from it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What happened?
A lot of times.
Tell me.
Most of the aggression that I had happened to me was caused by, same as with dogs, too much pressure, low defensive threshold.
Yep.
Usually with K-Jacks, it's generally the times that I've been nailed and hurt the worst have been either a cat being scared of the environment. Maybe you raised a tiger on a circus that was in a tent. So like a tent circus, even though it's in a different town every day, looks exactly the same to the animals. Like it's the same tent, the same seating, the same ring. Everything looks the same, smells the same, sounds the same. So we call those mud shows in America. And then there's building shows, which are like your big Coliseum shows. And I had tigers that spent some years on a tent show, and that's where I trained them and raised them. And then you move into a building show and
they're less cooperative.
Well, yeah, because everything sounds different in a building. It feels different.
Yeah.
Like
they just don't have that
environmental
environmental
And so they're already,
habituation.
it's layered stress. They get in there. It's a new place. It sounds different. You walk in the cage and they're like, that's it. That's too much. It's fight or flight, And when I was younger, I wasn't good at reading that and wasn't good at walking up and going,
Not today.
Let's just send him back out and try again tomorrow. Like, we don't need to go in there today. We got all week.
Yep.
So most of the time it was with that. The worst I've been hurt has actually been by elephants and camels and things like that. Same thing though, like fighting with each other or like I had a male camel hurt me really bad because he was in a rut and he was just trying to rape me. That broke a bunch of ribs and messed up my back. And luckily I survived. Like he got me down inside a semi-trailer.
Oh, wow.
And nobody could hear me scream. He was on top of me, crushing me with his knees. I couldn't scream loud enough for anybody to hear me. So I was stuck in there for like 5 minutes getting bashed by this camel.
Holy shit.
But like with cats, it's always fighting with each other or just pressure. Like I'm really good at not putting too much pressure myself. I think that's been my success with the dogs.
Was there a defining moment in that? Like, was there something that really stuck out in your mind, or was it just a series of a lot of little things that sort of...
Little things, and like I always took the cats way more serious. Because of Wayne having been killed by one, I always took it way more serious. Like that's a pretty good negative reinforcement.
Yep.
Like if the guy that taught you how to do it got killed doing it, you're like, okay, I'm going to play the spicy game, but I'm going to play it at the very edge. I'm not going to dingle on the inside too long.
That says something about you as your character as well, because there's a lot of people who would run from that entirely and say, well, my mentor just got killed. I'm not going in with
Whereas
big
that
cats.
with me, that's what made me want to do it. Like not to prove one up him. It was more like, well, let me see what could have been different about that. I got good enough at it where I can see what happened in his scenario. And it was pretty much a no-win situation, no matter what. He got grabbed from behind by a tiger. And just like us, like when you get grabbed by a cat, the correct thing to do is to not pull away.
Yep.
But that's nearly impossible to do. Just like the right thing to do when you get bit by a dog, unless you're a decoy and you're getting bit all weekend, every week. Like I can do it, but I've been bit by a lot of animals. So when I get bit by a dog, I'll shove right into it. And Zach and Pat, for sure, because they've done that enough that their reflexes to do that. But your average person, no matter how many times you tell them, when you get bit by the dog, don't pull away, your flight reflex kicks in and you pull away. Like you can't change. I've taught too many people to work lions and tigers. I don't feel like you can actually change your genetic fight or flight reflex.
No way.
And I feel like the most dangerous one, like there's not just fight or flight, there's freeze. And so that's the most dangerous one. When it comes to animals, I feel like that's when I see most things go catastrophically wrong is in the freeze period. Flight is not a very good strategy usually for humans, where forward aggression towards an aggressive animal is usually your best out. But the freezing, that very seldom goes good for the person.
Freeze only works when someone else flights.
Yeah.
Because they become prey and you get past.
Right.
But if it's just you...
If it's just you and an animal, Freezing just makes you a slower target.
Yeah.
And I've had people that want to learn how to do it. And if they have a really strong flight reflex, I'll teach you how to do this, but it's never going to be safe. Like, because as soon as something goes wrong, which no matter how many scenarios we practice of this and that, something will deviate. And your response to that is going to be to flight. And that's going to turn that into prey. And you'll be dead before you get to the door. Like, you can't outrun the tiger. It's not going to happen. So
now that you're saying that, what about the advice on bears like in the States? Because we don't have bears here, obviously, apart from drop bears. But what about the advice that people say? Yeah, playing dead. Does that work or is that a fallacy?
Here's my advice. I'm going to give it to you guys on the canine paradigm so you guys can patent it. If you're out with friends and there's a bear, everybody runs. You don't have to be the fastest. You just don't want to be the slowest, and it helps to trip somebody. If you're by yourself, you could try playing dead. There's some evidence that can be effective.
Yep.
I have videos on my Facebook of me. I'm really bad about interacting with wildlife, like actual wildlife. And so I was driving through Montana one of the last times I was in America on the interstate. I see some baby bears hanging on the side of a tree. I'm like, shit, I got to pull over. I have to make these bears my friends. So I jump out, and while I'm there with my phone taking some pictures, wait, where's the mother bear? And she's like 20 yards away, and she's vocalizing. She's pissed because the baby bears are between us.
Yep.
For sure, she wanted to chase after me. And for sure, had I turned around and walked away, she would have. You know, it's just like dogs. It's the exact same thing.
Yep.
But I didn't. I didn't turn away. I didn't threaten her, but I also didn't give her any space. I stayed there. I took pictures of the baby bears. They crawled down out of the tree, ran back to her. Crisis averted. You know, had she come forward, I would have picked something up and ran at her as fast as I could. That's just what I would have chose to do, because I'm 97% sure as soon as I did that, she would spin around and run as fast as she could the other way. Like, she didn't have the heart. It's a female bear, not very big. Her survival is much more important to her than those baby bears. Like, you just get really good at calculating what the best move is. And that was my plan, was to just, if she does charge, I'm going to pick something up. I'm going to run right at her. The other thing is, that picture is so novel to a bear. You can't do that in some places in Montana because the bears are so, I wouldn't say domesticated, but they're seeing people. If a bear sees people on a daily basis, or if you try to do that with a circus or a zoo bear, they will take the stick away from you and shove it inside you.
Yeah.
But this is a wild bear. It's pretty far out of civilization. She hasn't seen that picture enough to be able to go, no.
And it has the flight
bluffing.
capacity.
Yeah, you're bluffing.
Yeah.
My advice with a bear would be to charge it if it's a wild bear. If it's a domestic bear, prey maybe. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we don't have bears.
Yeah.
We do.
Well,
we've got the drop bears.
That's true. We've got drop bears.
Exactly. I'm going to take control of this until we're going to wrap up, because I feel like this could go for 10 hours. And there's a million stories we could tell. How do people employ you?
My business is Lone Star Animal Behavior. Google that. It'll send you to me if you're in Southeast Queensland.
Do you have an email?
Probably.
Dude.
Lone Star Animals.
Caisey at lonestaranimals.com.au
Something like that.
or something.
Something like that.
Google me.
So just look up Lone Star Animal Training.
And then if it's the club, it's Big Show PSA. If you got a good Malinois and you live in Southeast Queensland, come see me. We'd love to meet your dog. That's about it.
Cool, man. Well, Caisey, it's been fun getting to know you over the last 3 years, to be honest.
Yeah, it has.
You've been a wonderful addition to my life. I enjoy you very much. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks, you guys, for having me. You and Glenn have made my dog career much better.
Happy to
Hanging out
do
with
it.
You guys from time to time.
And one thing I will say about you is that you had a chance to prove your loyalty. You're a very loyal guy. And I know I've told you personally, but I would like to say to you publicly, thank you, mate. That means a lot to me. I really find value in loyal people because they're running short. I appreciate you very much.
Same Z's.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, that's it for another episode of the Canine Paradigm. As always, if you like what you hear, just like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from, and then just go do it to another one. No one checks. You're allowed to do it.
But you should.
Yeah.
You should.
If you want to support the show, best way to do that is to jump into Patreon. Couple bucks a month gets you a giant backlog of information as well as new stuff going forward.
But it doesn't have to be a couple of bucks.
No,
It can
you could
be
give as much as you like.
lots.
10 gets you access to a live stream that I do every month. Casey's
I
off in
watch
there.
it every month.
Yeah.
I watch it.
Casey's there. You could pay as much as you like, to be honest.
Somebody put $1 in and then said, "Hey, I'm not getting all this content I deserve." But
Yeah.
the $1 tier is
It's the $1 tier. It's the $3 is where you get
the
info.
$1 tier is just like, thanks guys, appreciate you, love you, but I haven't got a lot of money and I'm just throwing a bit of cash at you.
Yeah. So that's how it works.
Yeah.
Another way you can support the show is to get yourself some cool merch. You can do that in spring. There's links in the show notes. You can get some T-shirts.
A tapestry?
A giant wall tapestry.
Casey's got a tapestry.
Yeah, he's got two
in the
Yep,
shop.
there you go.
Have you got 2 Cainan Paradigm tapestries?
Yeah, I got the plain gray one with
See,
the plain logo,
loyal,
and then I've got the
loyal.
one that's called State of Affair, State of Union or something. It's got the 2 sitting there smoking a cigar and drinking a drink.
Yeah, the cool story. Show me your dog on that one.
No.
Well
This is
played,
called-
sir.
Oh, well played, so is it?
No, it's State of the Union or something. It's got the 2 dogs sitting at a table with cigars and drinks, and then it's got the big logo.
Have to.
I'll
Maybe,
take
maybe that's a
picture of
bootleg one.
It could be.
Zoe Needy did that one for us.
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you can get one of those. If you want to get in contact with us, the best way to do that is to jump into the Facebook discussion group. There's 10,000 odd people in there, all being civil and kind
Great
to each
people,
other.
wonderful
Jump
people.
into that. Or you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com. Love you. Goodbye.